conducting a Socratic seminar, which is a class discussion about the text that we've been working with for the past couple weeks on reparations for slavery. Before we start that discussion, I want to go over our discussion guidelines, okay? And they are posted at both table groups, so you can refer back to them if needed during the discussion. So first of all, we need to make sure we search for evidence in the text to support our ideas. So when you have an idea you want to share, make sure that you go back to the text, cite the line number so everyone in the discussion can go back to that line number, okay? And you want to make sure that you cite that evidence. Also, don't forget to use your reasoning to explain to the group why that is evidence. What is your thinking about it? How are you connecting that with our discussion question? Second one, we already talked about making sure that you use your line numbers so everyone in the group can be looking at the same thing, and it helps our discussion build on itself. Don't raise your hands. Wait for an opportunity to share, okay? And if it's silent until someone thinks of something that they want to discuss, okay? Next, make sure that you speak so that everybody at the table group can hear, as well as your observers, because the observers are collecting data on our discussion, okay? And observers, raise your hands. Good, okay, so those are our observers. Make sure that we talk to each other. Don't talk to me. I am just a facilitator. My only job during the discussion is to make sure that you stay on track with what the discussion question is, and to clarify any information if some information may have been shared that wasn't shared correctly, okay? Next, we need to discuss our ideas, not our opinions. Okay, our ideas, not our opinions. Now, questions is a great way for us to share and pull in some of those opinions on things we don't understand and what doesn't make sense to us. Make sure that we are using accountable talk. You will notice that on your tables, there is an accountable talk in front of you. I did add one thing to the accountable talk that was not originally there, and that is the question piece, because we noticed that last time when we had our discussion, our weak area was asking questions. So I've added that on there to help us remember to ask those questions, okay? Make sure that when we're using our accountable talk, we're using claims, reasoning, and evidence, okay? Remember, on here it says the goal is to participate 3 times, but because we're in smaller group, I'm going to allow you to participate 4 times, which means you have to choose those 4 times wisely. If you speak 4 times all in the first 5 minutes, then your job is just to listen and gather information because you're all done sharing, okay? Also, every time you share, you'll pull one of the chocolate eggs towards you. We will not eat them until the end. If you haven't shared your 4 times, then of course you will turn in whatever eggs that you did not use, okay? Let's see. Observers. You will be observing what's on the checklist in front of you. So I will tell you who you're going to be observing, and those are the only people that you're collecting data on. So Yaneli, you'll be collecting data on Allie through Vanessa. Okay, so write their names down at the top. Aiden, you're going to be collecting data on Jordan through Gabe J. So write their names along the top. Sydney, you'll be collecting data on Jacob through Marco. So write their names at the top. And Leon, you'll be collecting data on Kaylee through Elisha. So please write their names on the top. And observers, remember your only job is to observe. You are not going to participate in the discussion. After we're finished with the discussion, you will then give feedback based on the data that you collected, okay? Now, you all noticed that we have paper down today, and we had paper down our last time that we had a discussion, but I didn't allow you to use it. And I thought, you know what? I know a lot of you have asked in the past, can we bring our pencils so we can take notes? And it's really hard to take notes on our Socratic seminar ticket. So on the paper is where you're going to be able to take your notes, and then at the end you can transfer it to your ticket. But please remember, only notes, no doodling, okay, no writing notes to other people. It's just notes that you want to remember that you thought, oh, that was a great idea that someone just shared. And I want to use that, especially when I do my writing piece afterwards. Okay, so we're gathering those notes, talking about what we're learning about so that when we write, we can incorporate those great ideas into our writing. Okay? All right, so everyone should have their Socratic seminar ticket open in front of them. Side by side, I made it so that you can have it easy for you to access. Okay. Aiden, let's scoot you back a little bit so Jordan can have a little bit of space. She's kind of squished there. There we go. So Jordan, you can go ahead and put yours up there. All right, remember when someone shares and they refer to a line number, everyone should be then going to that section of the text, okay? All right. So today we're going to have a Socratic seminar discussion. Remember to use our accountable talk and cite evidence from the text. Our discussion question for today is, since reparations were not granted following the passage of the 13th Amendment, should Black Americans be granted reparations as compensations for the injustice of slavery? Okay. And you may begin.
I have a question about the text. On line number 21 to 22, it says that the total amount damage caused could be in trillions. And what I don't get is what kind of damage was completely caused to the blacks besides the slavery that has been due the past.
Well, I'm only going to add on to that because it's probably because they weren't being paid for more than 250 years. Mm-hmm. So when you're working that hard and not getting paid for that long of a time, it adds up for a lot.
I would like to agree with Cinder and Drake because I think that they would get all that money would add up because of how much work they've done and how much all of that would add up to on their money and how much they should get paid.
I need clarification on why it says in lines 18 and 19 why it says like they'd only pay the descendants of slaves instead of the actual slaves.
They're saying that because if you are just a regular African American that wasn't ever in slavery and you are a free African American, you wouldn't need the money because you wouldn't have been disgraced and had to work for 250 years without pay. So it's like only the ones that worked all that much are the only ones that could get paid, but only some of them that didn't work but worked a little bit would get only a bit of the money.
So basically what we're saying is that the slaves, blacks, weren't treated fairly because maybe because they're a different race or because something was just wrong with them, different.
Or skin color.
I would like to ask a different question. Why would the slaves still want their money like this late?
They kind of want the money this late on because right around now our economy, and I'm pulling this from information outside of the text, our economy we have gotten more money and more jobs are available now, and we are out of the Great Depression. So we could be able to pay the descendants of the slaves the money that is rightfully theirs.
Okay, thanks for clarifying that. I would like some more. I would like to ask a question about, like, why do people why do people are so wrong and racist to other people just because they're a different skin color, or just because maybe
they act different, or
I'd like to say that that they probably are treated different because mostly blacks were slaves, so that is a reputation. I can't say that word, but
reputation.
Just like our teacher said a little bit ago, that is what they're kind of known for a little bit.
Thank you for that clarification.
I would like to add on to Skylar, because it's not just because of their skin color, it's because they used to be like Native Americans, or they were in like a different colony or something. And the colonists were all white, and they meant the blacks as either African Americans or Native Americans. So then they had like different skin colors, so they're treated differently.
I'd like to say that I kind of disagree with Skylar a bit, because not blacks were only slaves. So some other different people, like some whites were slaves, and some blacks were holding other blacks as slaves.
But I would like to disagree, because in this text, it doesn't talk about whites being slaves. It talks about the blacks being slaves to the whites.
I was pointing out from what we learned earlier.
Alright, but I would need more clarification on that, because that doesn't really make sense to me that the whites were slaves. I figured the blacks were slaves.
The whites couldn't have been slaves. This is evidence from a different book we read from this passage. From the book we read, The Lost Colony of Roanoke, once after a long time, an Indian tribe, we believe, captured the whites of that settlement, and descendants from those tribes have actually admitted to having captured some of the Roanoke colonists.
I'd like to ask a different question. How come slaves were forced to give things? Like, why couldn't they just give them if they wanted to?
Because they weren't people; they were property. So that means that they can do that. The people that own them do whatever they want to them, because they're not people.
Like when we want.
I would like to agree with Skylar, because they basically owned the slaves, and so the slaves couldn't really have anything. So I like to agree with Skylar, because they owned the slaves.
I would like to go back to what Gabe said about, Gabe and Skylar said when Skylar answered Gabe's question. It's just like when we watched all those videos about when the blacks day in the life videos about how everything, like, they had to, about how they were doing everything for them. Like in the last video we watched, they're taking stuff to the laundry place, doing the laundry, doing all this stuff for them, and I figured that they were just treated really wrong, because maybe they have a different race, or maybe they just had something that they said you're going to be a slave
Because you're a different skin color, you're a different type of person, or...
I believe that they should give reparations to slaves, and because they've worked so hard for them, and now that they're not slaves anymore, they don't have anything, and they want, on line 9, they wanted 40 acres and the loan of an army mule, and that's why I think.
Well, they didn't want that. They gave the whites gave the ex-slaves. I'm going back to evidence 9. It says 10 and 11. That it says the whites provided the ex-slaves 40 acres and a mule, so they provided it for them. They didn't want it, but they provided it for them because that's what they needed.
I had a question. Like, wouldn't 40 acres be larger than
So they do what is called seceded from the union. To secede means to break away
house
from.
lots?
And they
Yeah.
created their own.
Because that would be pretty huge to just give somebody.
And they have their own president.
Yeah, that
So
would be
then we had a
pretty
civil war.
huge.
Civil war meaning a war within the country. Okay? Abraham Lincoln wanted us to stay
I
all
actually
one
have
country
a
and bring the
question
southern states back.
based on the opposition to the idea of slavery
It's
reparations.
very expensive.
On
The war is over.
line 26 through 28, it says there are no black slaves living today. Slavery ended more than 160 years ago at the cost of several 100,000 lives lost in the Civil War. It is unfair to ask American taxpayers, many of them from families that come to the United States after slavery ended, to pay for the wrongs of slavery. What I don't get about that is why are the people who wrote this saying that people that are coming from the other countries that have came here paying for the taxes, and also how it says that several 100,000 lives were lost in the Civil War. Most of those were African Americans fighting in it, with the whites.
It was like half African Americans and half whites, maybe.
I have a question that like sort of comes on with goes on with Drake's like answer to the last question. It's why do blacks have a higher chance of death?
Because they have a different skin color.
Because after slavery ended, they had nothing, so they weren't able to provide for their families. They didn't really have anything to do, so they didn't have jobs. So that made them not be able to get food. So they kind of just died.
I would like to agree with Cinder because when there were slaves, they basically didn't get the chance to, get their stuff. They didn't really even have money, and they kind of all they had to do was just provide for the person that the person who owns them.
Too many jobs for the blacks to actually
I would like to ask a question. Why were African Americans separated from their families and stuff?
Because when the slaves were doing something wrong around their owners, pretty much, the punishment would be to take away their families, and that would make them to stop doing what they were doing wrong. I have another question. How long did the decision of reparations take? Like, how long was it?
And you guys can go ahead and continue to share.
Can you please repeat your question?
My question was, how long did the decision take, like, if they were going to have reparations in line for slavery?
On line 14, it says slavery the United States and the 13 colonies between 1619 and 1865. And then on line 13 it says Conyers introduced his bill in November 1989.
Okay,
I would like to agree with Drake because it is kind of the time that it's talking about the corporations.
I have a question that I was wondering for a while. If it's kind of weird, but the blacks have to pay taxes, but I kind of can see.
Blacks don't, because I don't think they have any money to pay their taxes. So I think the owners would have to pay their taxes for them.
That's what I was thinking. That's what I was thinking too. But it says in line. Where is it? That the government owes us money. That the government owes. It says in line 22 that the government owes the slaves about $25,000 to $100,000 or more dollars because. But I was also wondering, did the government give the money to the blacks so they can pay taxes now?
I'm thinking that that's money that the government owes them for doing all that work.
I'd like to add on with what you first said with the slaves have to pay taxes. No, they don't. That's why I'm playing evidence from when we were doing our class.
Same thing.
Yeah, but the top people they had to pay for their slaves. So it was just they had to pay for them.
Thank you for that clarification.
To build on to Skylar's, because how the blacks were slaves, their owners or the white people, or if they're slaves of another free black man, the person who owns the slaves would have to pay for the taxes and everything for the blacks to live.
I would like to build on what Allison said about the fact that whoever owned the slaves had basically the slaves would be work for them, but it was still coming more money out of the slave owner's pocket to feed them and pay their taxes and make it to where they can stay alive and not die of starvation or hunger or other things.
I would like to agree with Drake because they need to pay for their slaves so they can still own them and they can still get the money that the slaves are making.
I have a question to ask. Why did the bill fail to make it into the House?
Because they had a vote. I don't think it's in this one because she didn't give us the other paper. But they had a vote whether or not they should have the bill, and the vote failed.
Okay, thank you.
I'd like to kind of build on with what Vanessa said because it didn't go to the House because it was vetoed by one of the presidents before it could go there. It was one step away from going, but yet it was still vetoed by the president because I think he probably didn't want to pay all the money to the slaves from his from the government.
Thank you for sharing that.
I would like to ask a question. Why did taxes exist? Why did we need taxes back then?
They needed taxes because they needed money to either buy stuff from Great Britain at the time because back in the time the states made their own money, and because they didn't have a complete government set up, so when they had the money, the government would most likely buy stuff from Britain, because we still didn't have all the resources we needed to make all the supplies that they completely needed. So they would buy stuff from Britain, and the taxes that they would end up paying would go to the government of the state.
I would like to ask a question. But why is there still slavery today if in line 26 it said there is no black?
I would like to answer the question. When it says there are no black slaves living today, it means like if there was a slave, it means that they're paid.
I know, but they're mostly black.
Yeah, they are mostly
It's also
black.
meaning like if there is a black slave still living today, then they wouldn't have him or her be a slave anymore, because we don't have that at all. We don't have slaves.
Alright, I'd like you to please finish up the comment that's being shared right now, and then I will give you your next direction.
It's saying that we don't have any slaves here, because the black slaves were gone. But there still is slavery in continents like Africa, slave children.
Thank you.
Alright, those of you that are observers, I want you to please now analyze the data you collected. Make some notes to yourself about what you're going to share, okay? And remember, all what we're answering, what we're going to be sharing of that data is how well we answered that question, our essential question, which was, since reparations were not granted following the passage of the 13th Amendment, should Black Americans be granted reparations as compensations for the injustice of slavery? So, yes, they participated, yes, they shared questions and discussed, but how well did we work on through our discussions in answering that question? Those of you that were discussing, I will be giving you your self-evaluation rubric. So based on your participation in the discussion, you will be filling out your rubric. And then I'd like you to set 2 goals for yourself for our next discussion.
Thank you. Thank you.
This is also a time, once you fill out your rubric, if you have any notes that you want to add to your discussion notes from the paper, you may go ahead and transfer some of those notes over after you've completed your rubric. Please raise your hand if you have not received a rubric and you're a part of the discussion. Okay, thank you. Real quickly, let's go over our categories for our rubric. So our first category is class.
Yes.
So our first category is gives evidence and makes inferences. So that's that reasoning piece. So not only did you give evidence, but you also used your reasoning piece. Ask questions, which led to a rich discussion and deeper group understanding. So the questions that you asked, did it allow the group to go even deeper into answering that essential question? And the last one, you acted in a way in which contributed to building a group that is collaboratively searching for meaning. So did you participate in a way that allowed the group to really talk about, discuss, and have a deeper understanding of that essential question of reparations for slavery? Okay? So go ahead and score yourself on your rubric. Again, observers, you are analyzing your data, making some notes at the bottom about what you're going to share. And observers, when you share your data, you're not going to share how many times every person did something. You want to summarize that data. So what does that data tell you about the group, okay, and the discussion? So you need to look at this, and then what does this tell you about how they did answering this question? And just write some notes at the bottom. So you're going to look at this data. So this data, now you're going to kind of summarize from what you watched, how well did your group do in working on answering that question, and in the discussion, okay? So looking at these different categories, you know, how did overall those group of students do? What were some strengths? What were some weaknesses? Okay. So when you look at this, what were some strengths? What were some good things that they did? And what were some weaknesses? What were some things that the group can work on for next time? Okay. So when you look at this data, you know, what were some strengths? What were some good things that the group did? And then what were some weaknesses? What are some things that the group could work on for next time? Brian? So what were some strengths that the group using this data? And what were some weaknesses? All right, observers, I'll give you about 1 more minute to finish up your notes. Remember, if you're finished evaluating yourself, you can transfer those notes that you wrote on the table onto your discussion notes. So you have those, okay? Since you have a couple minutes, you can transfer those notes that you wrote on the table onto your discussion notes. Wherever you like, or on the back, whatever works for you. Observers, please finish up what you're writing. Class. Yes. Class. Yes. All right, everyone should have their pencils down. Give your attention to the observers, please. We will have Yaneli is going to start sharing what she observed with this group, okay? And it's not a discussion, okay? So the observers are observers. So if they say that they observed something, it's not your job to then say, well, no, we didn't do that, or we did do that. It's for you to listen to the feedback, and that helps you set your goals for next time, okay? So Yaneli's going to start over here. Then when she's finished, Aiden, you will then share what you observed. Sydney, you'll start over here. And then when Sydney's finished sharing what she observed, then Leon will share what he observed, okay? All right, go ahead.
What I observed is that you have to have a little bit more questions, because I barely heard any questions. I only heard Vanessa said one, and then Drake, I think. Yeah, Drake answered only one question. Cinder
Yeah, he answered none. Especially, well, he did answer questions, but he didn't say any. Well, actually, he did say one.
Okay. So what are some things that they did well in their discussions?
In the discussions, he did great on the
They can't hear you.
like following up or clarifying questions. That was really good, especially these three. Vanessa, Ali, well, actually it was all four of you because I heard from all four of you.
Okay, so overall, how well did they do
Only
on their discussion?
one interruption and a half because
In answering this question.
Vanessa was like about to interrupt Skylar, but she kept it shut, so it was not a full interruption, but it was half.
All right, class.
Yes, yes.
Now, based on the data and the information and the feedback that you received from the observers, look back at your goals that you set for yourself and see if you want to revise those goals at all. Okay? Do you want to absolutely get rid of a goal because there's a new goal that you didn't realize that you could set for yourself that was a weakness in this discussion to help you next time? Or is there a goal you already wrote, but maybe you want to just revise it a little bit to make it be more specific with what the observer said with their feedback? Okay, so please take a look at your two goals at the bottom of your bottom of your page here. You should have two goals set for yourself about what you want to improve on for our next discussion. Take one and pass it along. Sorry, Allie. Melanie, you'll need to go get your ticket. Sydney, you can go ahead and get your ticket of your notes. And then you can go get your notes. Yes. And bring it back to you. Class.
Yes, yes.
Class.
Yes, yes, yes.
Class.
Yes.
Oh. Class.
Yes.
Good. Yes, I need to see your eyes. You can't see my movements, right? If you're not looking at me. All right, so now we have our assessment piece. Now I need to know what you've learned, and you need to be able to express that through your writing. We've been studying the 13 American colonies and slavery, and now the impact of slavery and its possible connection with some of the challenges that Black Americans today are facing. So what we're going to do now is you're going to work on your essay. So you need to decide. We've been working with this text for 2 weeks now, okay? So we read it, we annotated it, we collected evidence, we categorized evidence, we collected more evidence for our discussion question, we discussed it, we added more notes based on that. So now you need to decide. This is where your personal opinion, where you get to express your personal opinion. You need to decide if yes, you agree that there should be reparations for slavery, or no, you disagree that there shouldn't be reparations for slavery, okay? Now, so this is your opinion piece. It's an opinion piece of writing.